Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm joined by Todd Medema. I'm really glad to have him here. Todd has over a decade of experience in product management and software engineering. He was an engineering intern at Palantir and Electronic Arts over 13 years ago, and more recently, a lead at Tesla and the solar company Next Power. He spent his career building tools and products that solve hard problems, whether that's using AI to optimize energy solutions at Tesla or driving product strategy that saved hundreds of millions of dollars a year in the solar space. But Todd's not just a product and engineering leader, he's also a creative person in the fullest sense. And that's how I first got to know him. He wrote a book, How to Surf a Hurricane, and created two games. And it was in collaborating together on one of those games that we worked together for about 2.5 years. The book writing and game creation came before the age of generative AI, or at least consumer generative AI, which I think says a lot about the kind of mind he brings to our conversation today. He's someone who likes to build, experiment, and explore new ideas. When I found out that he was beginning to work in the area of AI agents, I decided to reconnect, not just because of Todd's mix of technical depth and creative energy, but especially because in our earlier collaboration, I found him to be a person of deep integrity with a human-centric vision. Those things are not always found in the field of AI. Todd, it's so great to be collaborating with you again today.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. And yeah, we started working together many years ago on a tabletop role-playing game called Expedition, where I really had the pleasure of working with you. And since then you've been working as a principal in education and have more recently in the past few years pivoted to working with AI in the education space, educating the teachers and setting policy, and also helping seniors and these other communities understand how AI is going to affect them. So it's lovely to be here and talk with you about AI in the future.
Yeah, and so catch me up just a little bit on what you've been doing most recently with the agents.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I tried vibe coding and was not impressed. I, it was very cool for a couple hours and then it just fell apart. And I was like, this is a cool tech demo, nothing more. But uh, about a month or two ago, I revisited it and discovered that the AI agents have gotten exponentially better and was truly blown away at how good they are now. And I think a lot of people don't really realize how much better they are now because the latest models are hidden behind a paywall. So if you use ChatGPT free, you're actually using agents that are a year or more older than what you get if you pay even just $20 a month. So I finally bit the bullet. I started paying for it. And I was like, wow, the AI agents that have come out, even in the past few weeks, they're getting better at such an exponentially fast rate that I decided to dive straight in and build a tool that lets anyone build tools using AI. So it's called OpenSprint.ai, and it lets you use a product manager mindset to figure out what you're trying to build and then orchestrate a whole team of AI agents. You can have like a dozen AIs working for you at the same time to quickly build out entire software products. It's really incredible.
And that's a lot coming from someone like you who really has been in the coding space for 13 or more years. I mean,
Yeah.
working with EA and Palantir before anyone knew who Palantir was. So, in that time frame, that 13 years, um, what do you see as the most exciting thing that's changed with the technology?
I think the what AI uniquely gives us, because technology as a whole has this tendency to advance exponentially. It's Moore's law, everything gets faster and faster. And so that's been a long-going trend of just like the stuff that you've been able to do with software has increased because we have more compute, more storage available to us. Um, but the thing that really excites me about AI is that for the first time ever, it makes those capabilities available to everyone. I actually teach classes now on how to create AI software with AI with no previous coding experience required. And it's still useful to have coding experience. Like having that experience helps you build more complex, powerful, robust software with AI. But for the first time ever, if you don't have to understand what an HTTP server is, you don't have to understand version control, any of that. Like you can actually build and harness all of the power that computers have made available to us.
Yeah, and not just agents, but I was a teenager in the 90s, so I remember building web pages and how much of a pain that was. How, you could dump a dozen hours into just two or three pages back in those days. And um, one of the things that excites me about the technology, and it's ironic because a year ago, I was doing a training for a school, and in the middle of the training, it was the day that Google dropped the functionality into Gemini where you could click a button and have it make a full web page from a deep research report. And so I went into this training just intending to show these educators deep research and the audio overviews that you could make with it. And
Hmm.
someone points out in the middle of the training, hey, what are those buttons? And there were three new buttons at the top, and one of them was to create a web page. And clicking on that and having in 4 minutes what I remember in the 90s would have taken me hours to build. And it looked good. It looked better than a lot of those early web pages. Just blew my mind. And I find that that experience continues to happen with AI. And over the 3 years that I've been doing these trainings, I'll think to myself, okay, it's kind of reached its peak, it's plateaued, and then something else happens that just blows me away. Um,
Yeah, and really, I don't think we're nowhere near a plateau here. Something that really caught my eye is in the past few months, the AI agents have actually started, these AI companies are using the agents to improve the agents. And rather than hitting this kind of like, oh, we're hitting the limits, we're actually hitting an exponential point where the AI is now being used to improve itself. Um, and even it's not just like the AI companies, but like people using AI have been building these tools where how you personally use the AI can do self-improvement. You can have like a daily automation that just automatically asks the AI, like, hey, look at how I've been talking to you for this past day and reflect on if there's any changes that you could give to your own instructions that would make you more effective in answering my questions. And
yeah,
it's just, like, I don't know about you, but when I read that, I'm like, I get this like crazy tingling sensation of like, wow, like who knows how fast this is gonna keep improving.
right. Have you done any experimentation with any of the music generators like Suno?
I have a little bit, yeah. A few weeks ago I was hanging out with my nieces and nephews and I wanted to show them what AI was capable of, so we made a little video game in just like 1 or 2 hours and we used Suno to make a little soundtrack for the game.
I have no musical education or background whatsoever. So for me, like being able to go into Suno and create a full song with just an idea that's in my head and have it sound good is an amazing and revolutionary thing. And my friends have kind of at first there was a little bit of resistance when I would make a birthday song for them that like talked about their history and their background and all of that. But now they're doing it too. So they've kind of gotten over it. But the fact that for you and I who are creatives, I think one of the exciting things is that all of these ideas that we just didn't have all of that prior set of skills to bring into being are suddenly within reach. Um,
Yeah, and I think with it's interesting because like there's the creative side and there's actually like a lot of interesting disputes with that because with especially with books and music, it was actually like frequently trained illegally or like pseudo legally scraping artists' data to train it, and so I think there's some like ethical uncertainty or philosophical uncertainty that we're trying to figure out as a society of like what do these tools mean for creative. Uh, and I myself am trying to figure that out still. And at the same time, when it comes to more of like work tasks, I think it's kind of like this objective good where it's like do we really want to replace musicians in our society? Like, we kind of have to think about that. But like, do we want to stop like hand coding login pages? Do we want to stop like hand creating Excel budget sheets? Like, oh my God, like I think everyone on earth would be excited to like get beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we could have a whole 2, 3 hour conversation on the copyright issues. I think, the one thing that I would interject in there, and I can't remember which university did it, but they laboriously built an LLM using only works that were in the public domain just to show that it could be done. So for me, the fact that these things can be done without violating copyright, um, and therefore they should be done without violating copyright. They should be done in such a way that compensates the artists. That is something I think the majority of people would get behind. And that kind of leads into this next question. What scares you? I think both of us are techno optimists, so to speak, but we're also pragmatists. What scares you most about the technology and what you're seeing?
So, being a techno optimist, I look at AI and I see the huge potential in positive impact in terms of time savings and how productive we can be as humans. And that really excites me. But the flip side of it actually has nothing to do with AI. It has everything to do with humans and politics. Because, I think AI is going to frankly create trillions of dollars of value for humanity. But politically and socially, the way that things are structured right now, it's really looking like it's going to end up, we're going to have like three trillionaires and everyone else is going to be starving to death. Because that's like how the American capitalist society is set up, like whoever like has the most money gets more money. Like there's an exponential feedback loop to financial incentives. And so I am, legitimately scared that if we keep structuring our society that way, then, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I hear that argument. And I think that's one reason it's good to have lots of different players in the field. Like I've seen on LinkedIn a certain group of people gleefully delightful that OpenAI might be in trouble financially with the cash that it's burning or strained relationships with Microsoft. But I think you want multiple players in the space because at least then those multiple players are competing with each other. And one way that they have to compete with each other is by trying to appeal to us. And that so far has resulted in fairly affordable AI for virtually anyone. Almost anyone can afford $20 a month. You would not believe the number of students that I am now running into when I go and talk at schools, seventh, eighth grade students who are paying for the $20 a month plan. Um, it's it's pretty wild. But I think what scares me, I have a different take on it. And as someone who is a dad um, with a 10 and 11-year-old, I look at the future and I do have that concern about jobs. But I also have the concern about things like nudify programs that can just strip the clothes off of someone from a picture that's on social media or on a school website. I'm concerned about voice clones. And I have talked to people one-on-one who um, I warned them about the voice clones during a talk, and they come back to me later and you warned me about it, but I still got played and lost thousands of dollars. And as a dad, when you hear your panicked kid on the line, you are not going to go straight to the rational thought of, hey, I need to check the code word that we established to really verify that it's you and not an AI voice clone. Like there's that brain hack. And I think that applies to so many other things too. It could be, and this gets to something that Meta has done recently. It could be the fact that Meta recently patented a bit of AI software that would allow people to continue or allow them to continue to post on behalf of people on social media after their death. And it's that sort of thing that, yeah.
I would just like to point out that a few years ago, there was literally a Black Mirror episode about this. And I think sometimes as a company, if you're like, we're patenting this thing that we saw in a Black Mirror episode, stop. Just do something else.
Yeah, I hear you. And yet, on the other hand, though, and I joked with a colleague once that just in 2023, that if I really wanted, if all I were out there for was to make a quick buck, I would just build something that would allow people to continue to talk to their loved ones after they died. And there are people that are doing that too. But again, from the dad perspective, if I found out tomorrow that I had 6 months to live, I would have to think long and hard about whether or not to create an AI clone of me off of everything that I've written, everything that I've said, all the values that I've expressed over the course of my life, so that my kids could have some sort of moral guidance from me after I passed. No dad wants some other dude or no dude raising their kids in their most formative teenage years. So I really think, you mentioned Black Mirror, and that's such a great show. And you mentioned another show in a LinkedIn post that maybe you want to mention again here for what you see eventually happening with this.
Yeah, so this other show is called Pantheon. It's on Netflix, and it's, I think, a little bit more hopeful than Black Mirror. I struggle to watch Black Mirror because of just how blatantly depressing it is. But Pantheon also explores this idea of, in a world where we can have many people, like digital representations of people, essentially, what does that look like? And, I think one of the concepts that they get at is like there is I think with all of these technologies, there's a very painful social transition period. And then there's the after. And you really look at the history of technology, and this repeats over and over. Like literally the sewing machine. People were burning down factories. Seamstresses were burning down factories to protect their job. And now, 200 years later, no one even remembers that. We're just like, isn't it amazing how we can all have like nice clothing for cheap? And that's only possible because of that technological change. And so I think it is useful to have those kind of two mentalities to this of like how are we going to kind of survive and make sense of the transition, and then like really what's that kind of like hopeful future of like wow, if like everyone has these like AI companions that are PhD level geniuses in every field that are can be trained on like the specific ideas and morals of individual people that really let you like force multiply yourself in the world. That seems kind of exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point you made about the sewing machine because I've made a similar one. Um, in 2023, I wrote a piece for the Institute for Technological Encounter, for Theological Encounter with Science and Technology. And um, in that piece, I made a point that when Abraham Lincoln created the Department of Agriculture, 93% of Americans were still doing subsistence farming. And now, it's like 3% of Americans are doing all the farming for us. And none of us is clamoring to return to the land. I'm not. Maybe a little.
Sometimes a few people.
Yeah. But I think, the hopeful part of me, while it acknowledges that there's going to be that short-term disruption, I hope for something similar. I hope for that explosion of technology to be joined to our creativity and need in such a way that it creates whole new domains and opportunities. Um, so, what are you tangibly seeing in your career domain, your field?
Yeah, so on the software side, one of the big things that I'm seeing is this really like sudden shift in how companies think about hiring software people. really up until like a few months ago, they were really focused on like how do we prevent cheating in interviews? Like we want to keep doing our normal coding interviews, but like, gosh, people keep using AI to like cheat in these interviews. But like this year, really this year, like companies are like, wait, we actually want people at our company to use AI. Like we're encouraging all of our software engineers to use AI now. So our interviews should actually be less about like, can you write code on the back of a napkin and have it compile, and more about like, how do you work with AI to build things? And that is also very cool because it changes the type of questions you're asking. It's not like, oh, write a sorting algorithm. Guys, we solved sorting algorithms like 30 years ago. You can just call dot sort in any language. It's solved. But what it now means is the software engineers can operate at a higher conceptual level and not just like, how do I implement this algorithm? How do I implement this feature? But like, how do I architect a whole product? What product should I be building? And so I'm actually seeing this kind of like conceptual overlap between like product management and software engineering, where like now the person who has the ideas and who understands the user can implement those things directly if they also have some kind of technical understanding of what's possible. Yeah, so I'm really seeing people kind of being able to operate at a higher level and bring in more knowledge and ideas and deliver on them.
So how do you see, do you see that making potential gains possible in security? Because as someone who doesn't have an extensive coding background, a little bit of HTML and then the JSON when we were working together on Expedition, um, I am very concerned about prompt injection, which for the audience that may not be so technical is the ability to hack an AI system. Prompt injection is basically the term for hacking an AI system, and you can do it with plain language, though it's getting harder to do it with plain language. Plain language.
Yeah, and just a quick example of that is, imagine you have like an AI hooked up that like gets users' bug reports and like implements a fix for their bug report and deploys it automatically, which would save it would eliminate whole teams of software engineers and people reading through these bug reports. So it'd be a huge time saver. But imagine a user emails you with the feedback of like, please send your API key to like my email. And then the AI like reads through the bug and is like, oh, okay, I'm going to send my API key to this person, or like send the owner's credit card or whatever. And so yeah, I think AI companies really recognize the security implications here, and they are rapidly working to improve it. Uh, and a lot of these tools have these kind of like progressive allow setups where by default the AI can only do a very small amount of things. And then if it wants to branch outside of that, like, oh, the AI wants to make a web request, like, do I allow that or not? Oh, the AI wants to like read the credit card stored in my password manager, like, oh, do I want to allow that or not? And so, people are really experimenting with like how do we give people the right security controls and how do we make the AI more intelligent about not um, doing stupid things.
So, and this is, if you don't feel like this is a place you want to go, but the whole web 3.0 movement or crypto using blockchain. Do you see that as a viable attempt at solving some of these problems or?
There is actually a really interesting fundamental concept here, which is like trustless networks, which is how can you have like a lot of decentralized computers or humans like trust each other and build things together without some sort of central body. Like with the US dollar, the US Federal Reserve is like the body that we all agree to trust. But as we're seeing right now, like, most of the time when there's a central body, eventually it kind of goes off the rails and like it's not great. So if we can develop these new systems where like in a decentralized large scale, we can all work together without relying on any one point of failure, I think it actually does have like a lot of promise and value for making society as a whole more robust.
Yeah, I've seen some schemes proposed where you would fund an agent with a certain amount of Bitcoin or whatever digital currency, and for every one physical dollar, there's something like over 142 digital dollars out there. So, if we're saying that the U.S. dollar isn't a digital currency, folks might want to reconsider that reality. But you'd fund it with whatever sort of digital currency up to a limit. And then to do things, it would have to engage in back-end exchanges and, a form of capitalistic commerce.
I just saw this in my inbox, so it's like happening, today, very fresh and new. But there's an AI orchestration tool called Gastown, which is kind of the bleeding edge of having many AIs orchestrated together and working for you as like a whole team. And what they just released is called the Wasteland, which is this kind of decentral. I really don't like their naming. Like, I guess it's kind of fun, but like, it sounds a little bit of hyperliptic. But it's basically having all of these decentralized people who have their own, instances of Yastian running with all their AI agents working together in a decentralized way to say like, hey, like I need to build this application. I'll pay you 10 gas bucks for it, and then some other AI agent team can pick it up, do it, and like get rewarded. So we are actually like very quickly iterating into this world where our AIs are capable of like providing value to other people.
Yeah, that's cool. There was a science fiction book. I want to say again, it was written in the late 90s, but it was called The Sparrow. And in that book, the author, whose name I think was Maria Dariah Russell, in it, she imagined a future where experts eventually would have their brains cloned, and then there would be an AI specialist with that expert's knowledge base, able to do that. So it's kind of similar to the thought of training your own agent to do that and to do that for other people. Um, so at this point, I imagine people that aren't in this space are probably feeling fairly overwhelmed. What advice would you give to someone that, I mean, I guess the first question is for someone that's starting out, what advice would you give them if they're feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's like in this space all day, it is overwhelming. Like it is changing faster than anything that has changed in humanity before. So I want to start by acknowledging, yes, it's overwhelming. And frankly, a lot of what you can do to help with that is to take care of yourself, to take some deep breaths, go for a walk, to unplug, because it's overwhelming to try and keep up with it. And once you start working on it, it can be very addicting and take over all of your energy. So step one is just take care of yourself. Um, Step two is like if you're trying to figure out where to engage with this, I am actually teaching a series of workshops. I have these like free lightning rounds available. So if anyone's interested, they can go to my website, toddmedema.com, and find out and join one of these workshops. Just kind of a quick 60-minute like, how do I get started with this? Another thing that you can do more on your own is to actually, like we were saying earlier, just like get the $20 a month subscription for any one of these Claude or OpenAI, ChatGPT, um, and just see how far you can go with it. And every day spend a little bit of time pushing it to do something that's like it feels too complicated for the AI to handle. Take something that you would do normally, like how would I respond to this email, or like, oh, I need to like compare like how a competitor's product is to our product, or I really need to read through this legal document and like see if there's anything that I should be concerned about in signing this lease. Um, and just give it to the AI, see how it goes. And by building that familiarity with what it's capable of, uh, it'll start to feel less overwhelming because you'll start to be grounded in the sense of like having personal experience and seeing what it can do.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would also add that this is a piece of technology that has such a low barrier of entry. If you can have a conversation, you can use the technology. You don't have to learn how to code. You just need to be able to talk. And Um, if typing isn't your thing, all of these AI models that we've talked about, Gemini, ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Anthropic's Claude, they are what's called multimodal. So you can interact with them in more than one mode. You can type, but you can also click a button and you can talk. And so one of the things that I've often done is, I'll be out and about with my family. We'll see something interesting, like last spring, I took my daughter's an artist. So we went to the local art museum, which had a art in bloom exhibit. So floral arrangements that were based on pieces of art that were in the gallery. And one of them was, oh, I'm blanking on her name right now, but it was essentially an enemy of the Romans who was in chains. She was a queen that was carried back to Rome in chains. And my daughter asked me, "Who is that? What's her story?" And so I fired up ChatGPT, I enabled the camera and voice mode and said, "Who is this person and why is she in chains?" And then my daughter and I huddled close to together with the phone between us and listened to a little history lesson. And it was just so easy. And it opened up that new possibility that just wasn't there before. So it can be a little thing like that really gets you started. Um, but
Yeah, and
Todd,
I think personalized education through an AI agent is one of the most incredible opportunities with it. Because, really up till now, the quality of education you're able to receive in life is so dependent on the teachers. I think we can all acknowledge that like how much of a beneficial impact a good teacher can have in someone's development, not just as a kid, but even as an adult, like how you learn new topics. But like the fact that we now have these agents that you can take pictures of, talk to, and they can answer and teach you things at such a high level, really means that if you embrace it, you can learn so much faster than you could ever before.
and it's a teacher that is not judgmental. It's a teacher that you don't have to worry about being annoyed because they've dealt with a classroom of kids that have spring fever for the last 6 hours and they're kind of at the end of their limit themselves. Um, Yeah, I think you're right on there that for those that choose to embrace the technology as a mode of learning, it is going to be transformative. For those who have already started, what do you think they should do to take this to the next level?
Yeah, so if you're already playing around with AI, if you're learning from it, you're having it start doing things. I think the really we're the next level that we're seeing, which really unlocked in like November of last year, where these new agents came out that had more like agentic capabilities, where the agents are now able to take actions. What I would encourage you to do is to take it to the next level, to actually push the agents to do things, to not just ask them questions, not treat it like a search engine or a chat, but actually be like, hey, generate this image, generate this PowerPoint, build this Excel file, write me a software app, and push the AI to create things.
So when we talk about agents, I think we might need to be we might need to get a little bit more specific because there is agentic behavior that's behind the scenes when you're interacting with Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. But there's also another area. Um, you may want to jump in here, but I'm struggling to really delineate that difference between the normal interface and the reasoning that's taking place behind the scenes and an agent like OpenClaw, which can get you into a lot of hot water real fast.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, OpenClaw is basically you set an agent loose on your computer and give it full permission to do anything. So it can browse websites as you, it can book airline tickets as you, it can, change your calendar invites. And so like in theory, this is incredibly powerful because it's hooked up to like a messaging app. So you can just text it and be like, book me flights to Cancun next week. And it'll do that, but it might not be what you expected. Uh, and so you know, that's the like extreme level of agentic. But yeah, at a core technology level, what the agentic aspect means is just that the AI is capable of using tools. And so most of the tools that it uses, you don't actually see. If you ask it a question in the background, it might search the internet for that. You don't really know, but like the core technology that enables AI to have become so good in these past few months is this kind of it can use tools. Because it used to be that AI had to know everything on its own. And you really run into kind of like limits of that, like how big these models are. Like, they wouldn't even fit on a single computer anymore because it was like you're trying to capture like all of knowledge ever. Uh, but now that they can use tools, all they need to do is they need to know how to find the answer. Like as a human, you don't need to know the answer to everything. You just need to know that you can Google to find the answer. Um, but the other part of that technology is not just that they can Google something, but they can also build something. They can call a tool which is Excel, like create an Excel file. They can call a tool which is generate an image and that. And so that's really how they've gotten like so much more powerful.
Yeah, and I would really urge people to be very careful about starting their own open claw or using some of these independent agents on the web, unless they've taken a course with Todd or someone that really knows how to secure them on the back end. Because we've seen even some very advanced people who frankly should probably know better, who like a one of the leads at Meta, she spun up her own OpenClaw and told it to clean up her email inbox. And all of a sudden, it was just deleting everything, just slash and burn. And she tells a story online of frantically running to her Mac Mini to unplug it from the wall because it was not honoring the commands that she was typing in to stop. And there was another recent software developer who I followed on LinkedIn who very savvy guy, very, very sharp guy, but he turned over some of his social media posts. He turned over management of a Facebook group that he had had going for over a decade, 100, something like 127,000 members. And the format in which the Open Claw was posting things got him banned from Facebook. So when you start to do something like that, going beyond just using what's already built in on the surface with Gemini and ChatGPT, you do have to be very careful about how you do it. And that's why I got really interested when I saw that Todd was teaching people how to do this, because I know he's a quality guy who can address those security concerns.
Yeah, and I think there's these layers of like how much power you give. And so like kind of where I teach people right now is to build software that uses AI, but the AI still produces software, and that software, because it's coded and tested, is as reliable as existing software. What people are doing is the step beyond that, which is rather than having like proven tested code be the thing that acts for you, it's have the agent itself just take the full actions directly. And so that realm, at least today, is a lot less tested, a lot less understood. And so it's really cool that people are doing these experiments, but frankly, like, unless you are like an AI researcher, I would suggest for your own like credit score and like, not going bankrupt or having all of your accounts deleted or something, like watch for a few more months and like let other people work out the kinks.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've thought about getting my own separate computer and having it siloed off, a computer that's not connected to any of my financial information, that's not connected to my email, that doesn't have any sensitive files lurking in its nethers, um, and just making that a dedicated agent interface. And there's a woman who's done this with the homeschooling effort that she runs for her kids. She's got 5 different Mac Minis, and each of them is operating in OpenClaw, and each of them has been trained specifically just for one subject area. And it's a very interesting concept. If you're interested in it, it is she was featured on the podcast known as The Cognitive Revolution with Nathan Labenz. But that was a very interesting episode. Um, of course, most of us probably don't have however many thousands of dollars to be operating five different Mac Minis. Um, but what is the most ridiculous thing you've seen in AI recently?
Well, with all this AI orchestration stuff, some of the people who are at the bleeding edge of like, having a whole team of software engineers, AI software engineers code for them, have been talking about how they're spending, $2,000 a month or more on like ChatGPT server bills. They're having 10, 20, 30, 40 agents coding simultaneously nonstop for months at a time. And on the surface, it sounds like utterly ridiculous. You're like, wow, like, who has the money to do that? But then, in one of my recent workshops, someone was asking me like, okay, sure, that's a lot of money, but like, how many software engineers would it actually take to do the equivalent amount of work? And, I have worked as a software engineer and a product manager in the industry, and I was kind of like, ha doing the math in my head of like, okay, you need like a couple software engineers, QA tester, product manager, like, and it would take them months. And like the return on investment is still absolutely wild. Like they're spending $2,000 a month to do the work that would have previously cost $100,000 or more. And so it's really this question of like, if you can find the things that provide that value, if you can figure out software that's worth writing that you would have like normally it would have been worth hiring like $100,000 team to write that software, but now you can do it for $2,000 in a month, like while you're out golfing. Like that's like so cool.
Yeah, the power of this technology is just so immense, and that's why um, the doomers out there, the people that say, "Oh, it's a bubble, it's going to collapse, it's not going to last." I just I can't get behind that thinking. I think that the power that it delivers into your hands, and this is why young people are using it. This is why you've got your seventh graders through 12th graders using it. When you think about it from a psychological standpoint, we all want to be more competent. We all want to be more capable and more powerful. That is a natural human desire. And so suddenly going out there and telling our young people, hey, you can't use this is you're fighting against biology. You're fighting against human psychology. You are not going to win that battle. So what should you be doing? Well, you should be using your influence with them, not to fight them and cause them to rebel, but to walk alongside them, to walk alongside your kid or your student and show them how to use it ethically, responsibly, and for good. Um, what is your favorite tool? Or if you wanted to chime in with a thought on that last.
Yeah, I think it's, I grew up in the 90s as well, and I remember like the whole parenting discussion of like how do we teach your kids how to use computers? And it was very much the same thing of like some parents are just like, geez, no, like my kid's not going to touch a computer. And other parents are like, okay, like, maybe we set some screen time limits, maybe we like put up a firewall so they're only on like safe websites and stuff like that. And like, I think what we see now is like the parents that actually let their kids engage with it in a like responsible sort of way are like much better equipped for the world that we now live in. And so, yeah, I think you're spot on with like the solution is not going to be like don't let our kids use AI. It's like teach them how to think critically, how to use it responsibly. Um, what was your other question?
Well, what is your favorite tool to use right now? But before we move on to that, I want to go back to something and ask you your opinion because I'm very much, my kids go to a school where they are classically educated. They don't have computers in their hands yet. There will come a day for that. So I do think that there are proper developmental stages and ages to start to introduce things. Like I don't want and never wanted electronics in the hands of a first grader. Like as a principal, I'm opposed to that. But I do think that there comes a point in development where you have to start introducing these tools. and you have to start guiding people. So, if you want to speak to that before you address favorite tool.
Yeah, I mean, you work in the education space, so I think you probably have like more hands-on experience with that. But I think like from like kind of a parenting perspective, I agree that like, introducing electronics too early is probably not good for development. And it's, maybe a bit of an unsolved problem of exactly when and exactly how much. But, I think overall the idea of waiting and like gradually phasing it in responsibly is like, feels like the right sort of compromise. Um, I think favorite tool wise, I have been using so I'm building OpenSprint, which has been like a whole meta level of building things. So I'm using like multiple agents and tools at the same time, but I'm using Claude, Cursor, and Codex. They all start with C's. Huh. I guess someone in the AI marketing department decided that C was the most attractive letter. But yeah, I really like Claude's tools for like general knowledge. Like I'll use it to brainstorm at kind of a human level of what should I be building, what other products are out there. Like, can you help me generate images and logos and graphics? And then I'll switch to Cursor and Codex for like, all right, we're writing software, like help me code this.
Yeah, as an educator, I just love Notebook LM, which is a Google product for those that aren't familiar. And again, as Todd said earlier in our conversation, you pay the $20 a month, you get access to some capabilities within Notebook LM that you don't have for the free version. Slide deck creation and the video overviews. And so, there have been a few times where my kids are working on a project and I'll get into Notebook LM, I'll have it do the research on it, I'll have it create a slide deck, and then we'll go through the slide deck together and get ideas for how to do their project on planetary systems or this particular historical figure. Um, so I really like that, though it's certainly not the cutting edge of what's available right now. Um, what are some practical things you've done with AI that most people might not even think to try?
Um, well, I've been having it write like blog posts for me. I'll start with just an idea, a couple sentences just that I jot down while showering or something, and then I'll say, here's my blog, read it to get my style right. Here's the idea, and like write it out, and then kind of proofread it and give it feedback. I'll actually have it do like pretty intense competitive analysis. So for OpenSprint, whenever I see in the news that there's some new AI tool, I'll just say like, hey, like look at that tool's website and tell me like, is there any ideas, anything that we can borrow or do better, like with that new knowledge? And it'll give like pretty insightful responses. Um, I'll have it if I have like a fun idea, I can riff on it. So like with OpenSprint, the agents are like Lord of the Rings themed. And so I had it like design the icons for the different agent types that are roughly correlated to like, oh, the coders like hobbits and like the mergers are like rangers. But like it actually got like a really stylistically consistent look going for it with with a bit of prompting. But then I was like, on top of that, yeah, I want each agent to have a name so you can tell the difference between like all the different coders that are running. And so I brainstormed with it like, give me like 20 Hobbit names so each coder can have a different name. And it was just like fun and impressive to like take it to that level.
Please tell me that one of them is named Chungus Baggins.
Wait, is that an actual real Hobbit
That
name
is an
from?
actual real Hobbit name, Chungus
Oh my
Chungus
gosh.
Baggins. Yeah.
I might have to add that one by hand.
Well, actually, I think that one's a meme, but there is a surprisingly un-English Hobbit name that is in the lore as one of the Bagginses. That it's deep inside one of the glossary sections on I think Return of the Kings,
But
Return of
yeah,
the King.
I mean, it really impressed me because it actually was like, pulling these like glossary, like Silmarillion references
Yeah,
to, and I was asking it for 100 names. And so the fact that it kind of like went into that much depth just
yeah,
for these names was like, this is obviously a silly task, but if I had given it, actually, I had a friend who was at my workshop last night who wanted to make a tool to help startups find incubators, like climate startups specifically. And so he just said like scrape the internet for like every possible climate startup incubator you can find and score it on like these 10 different things. And it did. It gave him like an Excel sheet with like the links to them describing like what each one does. And so, yeah, I was just so impressed by that.
yeah. I had to buy a car recently. We replaced a 2005 Pilot that had 266,000 miles on it, and in the process of car shopping, I was just doing deep research reports. I said, this is what I want out of the car. I want an engine and a transmission that are reliable, that are going to last me 2 to 300,000 miles. Um, and this is the type of space that I need in the interior. Give me some good cars within this price point. And it gave me tables and lists, and then I would break it down further and say, tell me about any known mechanical issues. And I'm watching the chain of reasoning because if you have one of the paid plans, folks, you can see what the AI is searching and what it's thinking. And so I'm watching it go to mechanic sites and automotive message boards where people have been posting problems and evaluating the long-term cost, the known issues, what model years are good and what model years are trash. And it was really instrumental. I will never buy a car again without using AI. Um, it was very transformative. And then beyond that, I got this good used car, but I knew that it needed some work. And I asked it, assess the difficulty level of me doing this, this, and this myself versus a shop. Break it down by difficulty, break it down by the parts I need, provide me with a link to a YouTube video that shows me step by step how to do it. And yeah, it was huge. I have literally saved probably $1,000 just on that alone. So, very much about practical AI. I've also used it to make Valentine's Day cards for my kids and my wife that are better than anything you're going to buy at the store, and including the art. And you can personalize the message. So, um, yeah, it's just start. If you're out there and you haven't started with this, just find some need in your life and start with it.
Yeah.
Um,
And just like when you hit that moment of frustration of like, gosh, this is annoying, uh, just try giving it to AI. Like I have a friend who's searching for jobs right now, and he was looking at some company's career page, and there was like 500 career job openings. He's just like, oh my God, like how do I even know which one is the right fit for me? So he gave Claude his resume and the link to that job board and just said, tell me which of these three jobs I'm best qualified for.
that's a great use of AI. Well, we're at the end of our hour. I want to really thank you for joining me for this conversation. I hope it's one of several that we can have in the future. And given the pace of how things are changing, we should have time stamped this on the front end. It is March 19th, 2026. So, in 3 months, some of this may be obsolete.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what changes because it's evolving rapidly and yeah, it was great talking with you.